live from Israel with us right now. Overseas, we've got our friend Jeff Tiegs. Jeff spent 25 years in the special operations community. He was a Delta Squadron commander. He has tremendous experience in military and national security affairs. He just today met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and also with the defense minister of Israel. Jeff, first of all, just tell us about the mission set over there and what you've learned so far.
Well, Buck, thanks a lot for having me. It's great to connect with you again. Just a few weeks ago, this organization that I hadn't heard of before, the European Leadership Network, reached out to me. They were looking for a couple of Americans to join them on this military expert panel that consists of mostly Brits, but a couple of Aussies, an officer from Romania and France. And I had no idea we would be given this level of access. So we've really gone from the tactical briefings. We surveyed the sites of the October 7th attack in Israel. We went to a couple of the kibbutzim. We went to where the Nova Festival. We got some really detailed briefings on how this attack was actually pulled off. We saw some video that has not been seen before. So from the tactical level, we've had some incredible access, and we have also been briefed by some of the commanders on the ground. The commander that just was replaced, who has really the one who really became the groundbreaking pioneer on how to integrate the fight within Gaza above ground and below ground. And then yesterday, we were actually able to have a military escort from the IDF to survey what is actually happening in Gaza. The fight continues.
So you were in Gaza yesterday.
We were in Gaza yesterday, yeah, and we followed the Philadelphia corridor from the Rafah entrance all the way down to a Swedish village to the sea. We were able to survey some of the tunnels that they have found. We were able to survey some of the old fighting positions and even some of the homes that continue to stand, and really get a good glimpse of what the Israeli Defense Forces are dealing with. And then we cap that off today from a lot of this tactical evaluation to really hearing straight from the sources, both with the Minister of Defense and Prime Minister Netanyahu, on where they see going forward and what their strategies are to defeat Hamas once and for all.
Jeff, I'm going to be over there in December, and I think I'm going to see much of what you are seeing now. When you see what Hamas is still doing in terms of holding hostages and certainly executing hostages, 6 of them, including an American, is it even more unbelievable to you that there is any suggestion that Israel should cease fire or stop what they're doing to try to get their people back and also protect them from another October 7th ever happening again?
It's mind-boggling that anyone thinks that is a realistic option. Part of the defenses, and when you look at the success that Hamas had on October 7th, part of that was the expectation that they just wouldn't do something so barbaric, that the world would turn their back on something this medieval. And the world supported Israel in a very, very short time. And then the information operations campaign that Hamas and Hezbollah and the other proxies and through Iran was able to twist this story. So the barbarism was even at a higher level than I was aware of. It's so complicated on how they're continuing to fight. So really the primary focus has been to defeat Hamas as an army. We talk about Hamas as a terror organization, but it was actually a terror army. And it is almost decimated. There is about 1,000 Hamas left that they think exists. Probably half of them have already escaped Gaza. So they're really down to just tiny pockets of resistance, and they're continuing to search for these hostages. But it's always been a race for time. But it really is an untenable even discussion to give up the Philadelphia corridor, because the hundreds and hundreds of tunnels, the size, the scale, and the scope of them, there's no question how Hamas armed. There's no question where they got their munitions. It was all coming in through Egypt. And that is the single line of defense that Israel has to control.
Speaking of Jeff Tiegs, former special operations community, and he's part of this delegation of military experts, this panel that has been meeting with the highest levels of the Israeli government. And he was just in Gaza yesterday telling us about the Philadelphia corridor and what he saw there in terms of the tunnel networks. Jeff, how how much, and I know, you spoke to Netanyahu, you spoke to the defense minister. So to the degree you can let us in on some of the high level there, please do. I know you probably have to respect some confidentiality equities as well, but to whatever degree you can tell us about their vision of where this is going next, or even just what you see as the final stages of this war against Hamas that was kicked off with their mass casualty terror attack on October 7th.
Yes, and I think ironically, Buck, one of the only criticism we had of to share with Israel is that they're losing the IO campaign. Yes, there were mistakes that were made as far as the early warning and how far Hamas was able to advance with their terror attack, but they've got to be more open with the public and the press. And so hopefully you'll be getting some calls yourself for them to talk to you about this in person. But they recognize that this is the first year of probably a 10-year war, and they're trying to limit the front. So right now they're being threatened out of Gaza. They're being threatened by the Houthis in the south. They're being threatened by Hezbollah in the north. They're surrounded by Syria. They're continuing to be rocketed by Iran. Lebanon is, trying to play both sides. So they've got a multi-front war, and they're trying to take it piece by piece. They don't want to have a multi-front war. So they're trying to prioritize what it is they're doing. But obviously, like to defeat Hamas and recover the hostages is sometimes at loggerheads, and that's what they're trying to deal with. So they're in this for the long haul. They're really trying to find answers on what happens with the day after, but there are very, very few good solutions.
Jeff, is it fair to say that Hamas is desperately rooting for Kamala Harris to win this race?
I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to admit the answer is yes. I'm not a politician. I'm a soldier. I'm aware of politics, and as a civilian, I'm involved in it. But, having been over here and really talked to folks and watched the degradation from some of these other administrations and how we've really cooled relations with Israel, we've begun to be real critical of Israel. One of these pivotal reasons that Hamas attacked when it did was because they saw Israel as weak. They saw the West as weak. They saw our ties as tenuous. And this wasn't just initially designed to be a terror attack that was stopped. These Hamas fighters had plans and maps and logistical support to be in Israel over a month and to get all the way to Tel Aviv. And they thought if they could get an encroachment into Israel and just wreak enough havoc, they were expecting Hezbollah to attack from the north. They were expecting Iran to jump in. They were expecting Judea and Samaria, which we call the West Bank, to be internal fires. So while there was some incredible military terror successes by Hamas's, this did not become a regional conflict. We have got to continue to demonstrate our stalwart support for Israel. And they're really feeling the strain, and they've been feeling the strain on a bunch of these latest administrations.
What's your tactical sense, Jeff, of the ability to bring home any of the remaining hostages?
I'll answer. One of the reasons I'm here, Buck, is because throughout my career, I've spent a lot of time in Israel exchanging ideas and techniques and tactics and even information and intelligence. And we tried to learn from each other on what we were doing and how we were successful in different arenas. And I couldn't be more impressed and proud with this very young defense force on how they are working combined arms maneuver, how they are integrating what they're doing above ground and below ground, and the learning curve that they've created over the last few months. But I think people believe there are 101 hostages still missing. We believe that there's probably less than half of them still alive. And every day that goes by, it becomes more and more risky. So the IDF, day and night, are continuing to clear these tunnels. And one thing I'll add that I found interesting, what these tunnels, I learned yesterday, these tunnels weren't made for fighting. They were made for survival and logistics and movement. So once you understand how to occupy those tunnels, the movement goes fast. Now, Hamas is learning as well. So as these tunnels were first beating the IDF figured out how to solve that problem. But now there's this pivot where the remaining Hamas are starting to make these tunnels booby-trapped and rigged to blow with cameras. So it's slowed down the movement again, and it's very, very risky. Inside these tunnels, as they've been created over the last 20 years, includes cages and jail cells for these hostages, and even secret hiding places to put them. So every day that goes by, it becomes less and less likely that we'll be able to save more of these hostages. But it is firmly, in my opinion, that the IDF is doing everything they can at a very high professional level to do the best that they can.
Jeff, do we have any idea what percentage of the tunnel network has been uncovered, discovered in any way by the IDF yet? Or do they even have a sense for how much there is underground at this point?
It's absolutely staggering. So some of the numbers that I have in front of me that I wrote down, it was over 1,800 underground shafts have been destroyed. So, they destroy some of the shafts, and then they'll enter through some of these shafts and begin to clear these tunnels. The one division that we were attached to yesterday, over the last few months, they've cleared over 2,000 kilometers of tunnels under Gaza. And they're drilling endlessly to try to identify more of these tunnels. And the morning that we went into Rafah yesterday, they had bumped into a new tunnel last night, and they were just clearing it today. So the tunnel network is vast. I think they're believing that they have about 80% of the tunnels mapped. I'm not necessarily that they've been inspected, but that they have about 80% mapped, and they're just trying to take it systematically. And I don't think it comes as any surprise, but when you see it with your own eyes, Buck, every single tunnel that we went to look at terminated in a kindergarten, a mosque, in a hospital. It was absolutely their standard operating procedure. And the other thing that was kind of weird that you don't think about is these tunnels also terminated right in the homes of these Hamas leaders. So just like you and I would get up in the morning and have our morning coffee and maybe walk over to the home office, these guys were walking straight from their homes down into these tunnels and going straight to work. The network is amazing, and it just can't happen again. We gave them in 2005 free autonomy to do whatever it is they wanted to do in Gaza. They decided to purge it of Fatah and any reasonable group from the Palestinian Authority. And for 20 years, they have been systematically with one thing in mind, and that was the October 7th barbarism. And
Jeff,
this is like
I have to ask you real quick.
Yep.
We're only got a minute. I mean, you went muzzle to muzzle with Al Qaeda, with the bad guys of the war on terror. Is the evil that you have seen from Hamas by being there and seeing the tunnels and seeing the videos reminiscent of what you saw with AQI and these other groups?
This is the purest evil I've ever seen. I mean, these Hamas terrorists went in, and it was just wholesale murder. They slaughtered families, men, women, children, the old. And the videos that we watch, Buck, they're gleeful. They're singing, they're dancing, they're calling home, telling their mom and dad what they had just done with killing these dogs, with killing these pigs. So that the combination of the glee and the free-for-all fun that these terrorists were having, and the barbarism, the blood, the beheading, the rapes, when you actually see it, the live videos that they had on their body cams, I've never seen anything like it.
Jeff, honestly, can't thank you enough for your service to our country for decades, and also today for bringing this ground truth to all of us about this war that Israel is waging against the Hamas terrorists. Thank you for being with us. It's always good to talk to you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Buck. Have a great day.